Hi, this is Lamenter's Jail, and this is a full guide on how to defeat Maliketh the Black Blade at rune level 1, weapon level 0. In this first part of the video, I just wanted to show off the easiest possible way to defeat him without having to learn too much. And then right after that easy method, I just show off how to get the hardest to obtain items that you need to enable that easy method. And then in the second part of the video, I show off every single move individually that the Beast Clergyman and Maliketh have, and how to react to them and punish them individually, so that if you did want to do a hitless kill against this guy, that should be all the information you need to be able to do that. And then at the end of the video, I just have a couple examples of me defeating him, hitless medium roll, just so that you can see the flow of the battle, how it looks when you're actually doing it. As for this easy method, the phase 1 part of it is extremely repeatable and simple, and you would usually succeed on this. It's very reliable. And since you actually have to learn basically 2 entire movesets for this battle, the phase 1 and the phase 2 movesets are completely different. There's no shame in just using this easy method for phase 1 every time, just so you can guarantee that you get to phase 2 and then you actually learn phase 2 with melee. But phase 1 involves just luring this Beast Clergyman over to this pillar right here and then running around it until he starts doing ranged attacks, and then when he is doing ranged attacks, you just stand kind of on the side of the pillar and use Rotten Breath, and you don't actually shoot it at him, you just shoot it next to him. That way you can be protected by the pillar from his ranged attacks. It'll just block them and you won't get hit. And this Rotten Breath does come out in a cone, so even if you're not aiming directly at him, if you're just aiming next to him, it's probably still going to hit him because it kind of expands into that cone shape. And so if you are in the right spot, you'll be able to hit him, but he won't be able to hit you. And then you can, after you apply Scarlet Rot on him, you just stay on the opposite side of the pillar until phase 2 starts, basically. So it's really easy to do this. And then while we're just waiting for phase 2 to start, I just wanted to note a couple things for the equipment that I'm using in this example. You don't actually need the Dragon Communion Seal to do this. The Finger Seal works just as well and is much easier to obtain. And I am using the Knight Armor as well as the Ritual Shield Talisman, because both of these things combined will allow you to survive and poise through one of the dagger stabs that he does when he's trying to chase after you. So wearing those 2 things will make phase 1 much more reliable, because you're probably going to survive even if he does manage to hit you once. And then the Opaline Bubble Tier is completely optional, but I do like to save it for phase 2 and just use it right before phase 2 starts, because it just gives you a free mistake in phase 2. You're probably not going to get hit in phase 2 because the strategy is very simple, but if you do get hit, you'll still survive because of this bubble tier, and you'll be able to continue to try to succeed. And now that phase 2 is starting, I just want to discuss it so that you can understand kind of what you're seeing on the screen right now. Phase 2 is always going to start the same way. You're always going to start backpedaling away as soon as phase 2 starts and just try to run away, because when you do that, he's always going to do the Sword Stand Frontflip move. You can just drink a blue flask and backpedal, and then when he stands on top of his sword when it's plunged into the ground, you just wait a second and then start to run towards him, and you'll eventually just run under him, and just when you do that, you won't get hit and you'll just be able to run away and just make distance. You won't be able to run away from this move without running under him first, because if he does this and you're just sprinting away, the death orb that he creates with his sword is going to hit you even if you're continuing to sprint away at full speed. And because of that, you do have to learn this move, and you do just, when you see it come out, you just have to run underneath him after a second of him standing on his sword, and that is going to be able to dodge it. And then you just continue to run away after that. That is one of the 2 moves that you're forced to learn in phase 2. The other move is the one that you're going to punish with Rot Breath. It's the triple Death Beam jump. He does this anytime, but that includes when you're really far away from him. So this is the reason that you have to learn this move, is because even when you're sprinting away at full speed constantly, he can still use this move and hit you. Fortunately, dodging it is very simple. You just have to dodge as soon as you see the death beams appear in the air, and that should work at any distance. Just as soon as the death beams appear, dodge. Do that 3 times. And then basically immediately after your 3rd dodge, use the Blasphemous Claw, and that is going to parry the sword part of that attack and give him an opening that's just long enough to get a fully charged Rot Breath out on him, and that is going to inflict Scarlet Rot on him, and then you can just continue to run away again. Those are the only two moves that you need to know. The rest of the strategy is literally just run away and wait for the Scarlet Rot to whittle his health down. But another thing to consider is you will need to punish that move multiple times, so you really do need to learn how to like punish it and dodge it. Just a single cycle of like Rot Breath is not going to be enough to kill Maliketh, so you're going to have to punish it at least 2 or 3 times. And I do know that was a lot of information to absorb while watching the live action like phase 2 easy method, so I just want to show you a couple of clips of these 2 moves again so that you can sort of memorize them more easily. Again, the Sword Stand Frontflip is going to force you to wait until he's standing on his sword for a second and then run underneath him and run away in the opposite direction right after. You have to do this because if you continue to just run away from him in front of him, he's going to hit you with it. And then again, the other move that you have to memorize is the triple death beam jump, and for this you just have to dodge as soon as you see the death beams appear in the air, and then after the 3rd death beam you'll just use the Blasphemous Claw and then use Rotten Breath and then run away again. The safest time to drink a blue flask to replenish your Rotten Breath power is when you're standing behind a pillar, so just run away and try to stand behind a pillar and drink your blue flask. And that should be literally all you need to know to be able to defeat Maliketh at rune level 1, weapon level 0, the easiest possible way. So if that method was useful to you, please leave a comment and let me know, because that would make me happy. And what you're seeing right now is the easy way to go about cheesing Bernal to get the Blasphemous Claw. It is a difficult fight if you don't use the cheese, but you can just get him to spawn here in Farum Azula on this like random bridge, and then jump up onto the side of the bridge and stand behind this bush here, and then just wait for him to do a couple attacks or whatever. You'll have to dodge those, but after a second of him trying to attack you there, he's gonna give up, and then he's just gonna strafe back and forth, and he won't actually attack you from this point forward. So you can just use Rot Breath at him as many times as you want, and then eventually that will make him die without him actually like attacking you at all. This is just completely safe to do. You don't have to worry at all about like failing this method, and then you'll have your Blasphemous Claw. Really the only other thing you got to think about with Bernal is you do have to progress his questline in order for him to show up here in the first place, and that does involve defeating Rykard. So you will need to have defeated Rykard in order to use this strategy to beat Maliketh. But fortunately there is a super easy way to beat Rykard even at weapon level 0, rune level 1. You can check the description and I'll link a guide down there to like the easiest possible way to beat Rykard. Anyone should be able to do that as well. And I think that's the same thing with the Godskin duo. Like if Bernal doesn't show up as a cooperator available for the Godskin duo, I think it's just because you have to beat Rykard first. And of course, Rot Breath is like a gigantic part of this strategy, both with obtaining the Blasphemous Claw, but also defeating Maliketh in general. Both Phase 1 and Phase 2 rely heavily on this incantation. And I know I've showed off how to beat Aghail a bunch of times, but it's just really quick to show off, and it is like very important. You do need a Dragon Heart in order to purchase the Rot Breath incantation, and at rune level 1, weapon level 0, what you're seeing right now is the easiest way to obtain a Dragon Heart. You just go over to Aghail's arena and then just use the Mighty Shot Ash of War on a longbow just from the top of this like rubble right here, and you should be able to defeat him without really any worry. He will try to breathe fire up at you to get you up here, but he won't be able to because this is sort of a safe spot, and so it's really easy to do this. And then the other stuff I was using, like the bubble tier does involve defeating a tree avatar, but that is the easiest one to defeat in the game, and if you want a guide on how to defeat any of the tree avatars, I will link that in the description as well. In any case, that's totally optional, as well as the Dragon Communion Seal. Again, very optional. You could just use the Finger Seal instead. It's really negligible. The difference is not noticeable whatsoever. But if you did want to use the Dragon Seal just for like vibes, you could just lure that like ghostly banished knight that guards the Dragon Seal. You just lure him into the chariot path and hide in like the little crevice in the wall that doesn't allow the chariot to hit you, and he will just get destroyed by the chariot, and that's just the easy way to defeat him. And I think that's really all I had to share for that part of the discussion. So at this point in the video, we are at the actual moveset guide. This is every move that he has and how to react to them the most efficient way. If you were going to ask me for a weapon recommendation for this guy, I would say you should use the cold infused Morningstar with Cragblade as the Ash of War. Again, check the description for an easy method to defeat the Red Wolf of Radicon in order to get that like cold infusion unlocked. But the reason that I chose the Morningstar is just because it is kind of like the Starfists, which I guess are technically the best weapon in the game to fight this guy, just because its charged heavy attack is extremely fast. But the Morningstar has more range. I get just frustrated using the Starfist because you miss a lot just because the range is so abysmal, and so the Morningstar has more range. You'll hit a lot more often when you try to hit, and so it's just more reliable to me. And in general, during the Beast Clergyman phase, you are going to want to just stay right in front of his face. You can consider this your neutral position, the position that you want to continue to return to whenever you're not there. You don't really want to be any closer or further away from him than about this, because this is the distance that he uses the most punishable moves, and so just consider that while you're looking at this moveset guide here. Every time you do one of these moves, you'll just kind of want to try to return to this position. And the first move I want to go over is this Beast Claw move. He's got like two versions of this move. One is the forward Beast Claw that you're seeing right now. This is the version of the Beast Claw that he'll use when you're a little bit of a distance away, and what I like to do is wait for the Beast Claw like incantation part to appear, and then I like to just jump over that, land, and then do a running heavy attack. You might be tempted to do like a jumping heavy attack just right out of the air after the jump, but I find the running heavy is a little more reliable to actually land. I think the jumping heavy misses a lot. And if you're really close to him when he does the Beast Claw, he's just going to do this circular Beast Claw that goes out in just a circle around him. And again, you always know when this is coming because it always just happens when you're really close to him. So when you are close to him and he starts this animation, just go behind him, behind one of his legs like this, and then wait a second and then do a jumping heavy attack. And then after you're done doing this particular punish for this move, you're probably going to be behind him, so it's almost guaranteed that when you're kind of close to him, right directly behind him, he's going to do this like dagger slash retreat move. It does happen very quickly, so sometimes it can catch people off guard, but you just have to be aware that when you're directly behind him in that position, he's probably going to do this, and so you just have to expect it, and that'll make it easier to dodge. Something else he'll do at like a medium to longer range is this stone throw, and it does have a little bit of a wind up, so you do have time after he starts the animation to just sprint inside of the range of the stone throw. Like if you're very close to him, it just will go right over your head and it won't hit you at all. But if you are at more of a medium distance away or a longer distance away, you are going to have to dodge forward into him to dodge this when it's right about to hit you. Dodging sideways, it's still going to hit you if you dodge sideways, so you just have to dodge forward. And then sometimes you'll also see this dagger drag move, which is very punishable. Just run around the right side of him just so that you can kind of get by his foot here and then do a charged heavy attack. And then for this one, again, you're behind him, so it's probable that he's going to do like the dagger slash retreat or reposition move. And like I said a second ago, that one is like kind of difficult to react to. It comes out pretty quick if you don't expect it, so just make sure that you're expecting it. Anytime you're behind him, he's probably going to do that. And then another dagger thing he does is this like standing dagger stab where he, I guess, like staggers to the right a little bit and then he stabs, and this actually gives you enough time to just run straight up to him, and when you're that close to him, he's going to just like miss you with this attack. So if you're in neutral, as in like pretty close to the front of his face, and then he starts this, you can just run up to him and then do a pretty safe like charged heavy attack, and then he's just going to start doing the stuff that he does when you're directly under him, which I will go over in a second. But first, this ground rupture move that you're seeing right now, he can do that, and it's got a little bit of a wind up as well. So if you're in a position where you think that the next attack, like charged heavy attack that you're going to do, is going to stagger him, there is enough of a wind up here for you to be able to do a charged heavy before he actually creates any damage. But if that's not going to happen, or if you're not sure if that's going to happen, I would recommend just running away, because you can just not stand in the little spots on the ground where the rupture is about to happen. You can just see where it's going to happen. Just don't stand there, and then it'll rupture up into the ground and then fall back down to the ground after it's like up in the air for a second, all the debris and everything. And that actually can hit you too once it falls back down, so be wary of that. And also, on top of all that, he will attempt to attack you while that stuff is like floating in the air, so you'll have to dodge his attacks as well as like the falling rocks. That's all pretty complicated, and that's why I would recommend just running away, because when you're farther away from him, dodging everything is a lot easier. You just won't be like under it anymore. And he also has a few different versions of the Bestial Sling move. He just like throws a whole bunch of rocks at you, a bunch of small rocks, and they do a lot of damage actually, but sometimes if you're using the Ritual Shield Talisman and some good armor, they might not kill you, depending on how many of the little like shotgun pellets hit you. But there's 3 different versions of this. There's one where he just does it really quick off the ground, just grabs something and then throws it really quick. You'll mostly do that when you're super close to him. He also has a couple other versions where he like jumps sideways and drags his hand across the ground and then throws them. And then he can also drag his hand across the ground and then throw them without actually doing the sideways jump. And that is also pretty easy to like see coming. Really the hardest one to see coming is the quick one, and that mostly, like I said, happens when you're directly underneath him, when you're super close to him. So just be aware of that. And then these next 2 dagger slash combos that I want to show you are extremely common when you're sort of like in front of him as your neutral position, and so they're really important to learn. They do look a little bit different, but they are the same exact reaction, the same exact dodge timing for both of them. So something to note is he'll always do this after he sprints at you. If he's sprinting, that means he's definitely about to start like doing this move. And then he'll do a poke, and then he'll slash sideways, and then sometimes sideways again, and then he's going to do like a ground stab with his knife. And I can say this confidently, but he only reliably does this if you're just dodging sideways. And if you dodge backwards or forwards, this is going to break this chain of like moves and he's going to do something else. So just make sure you're dodging sideways during this move, and that is going to trigger it so that like the dagger plunge into the ground is always coming after the end of this move, and that will allow you to get an easy charged heavy attack on his head. So again, he'll do the dagger poke, you just dodge right for that, and then dodge right again, and then left, and then sometimes you'll want to dodge right again depending on if he like shows that he's about to do the animation for the 3rd slash. And then at the very end, after you've been dodging sideways this whole time, he's going to do the dagger plunge, and that one you just backpedal and then do a charged heavy attack after he does the plunge. Same thing for the quick dagger slash combo. He doesn't have a poke at the beginning of this one, but it's the same dodge besides that. You just dodge right, dodge left immediately, and then sometimes you'll have to dodge right again, depending on if he shows the animation for being about to do like that 4th slash. And then you'll want to just backpedal again, and then just wait for that dagger plunge and do a charged heavy on his head after he does the dagger plunge. If you just remember that like dodge combination, it's always dodging sideways for both of these moves, and it's always right, left, right, and then backpedal and charged heavy. The 3rd dodge to the right is not always gonna happen. It just is sometimes gonna happen, and it does happen after a very slight delay, so you'll have time to like determine if that animation is coming next or if the dagger plunge animation is coming next. So you do have a little time for your like brain to register like your next move. But yeah, the timings on the slow dagger slash combo and the quick dagger slash combo, the timings for the dodge are exactly the same, exact same directions, always sideways, backpedal at the end for both. You really will want to memorize this one because you'll see it a lot. So just, yeah, remember same dodge combination for both attacks. And then if you ever dodge forward and end up directly under him at any point, he's got 4 different moves you can expect. Either he's going to do like a quick bestial sling, like I showed you earlier. If you're close to him, he's going to do the fastest bestial sling, and that's the hardest one to dodge. But if he does do that, you can punish it with just a light attack. Or he's going to do this close, quick dagger slash like combo. It's a 3-hit combo. He's going to do 2 quick slashes after like a short delay of him just kind of staring at you. And then there's always going to be a 3rd follow-up slash. For this one, you can do a jumping light attack to punish those 2 quick first slashes, but there's nothing you can do to punish the 2nd slash. You just have to be ready to dodge again in case he does like the bestial sling after that. And then he can also do the circular beast claw. You're just going to react to that exactly the same way that I described earlier, where you run behind him and do the jumping heavy. And then he can also do the dagger plunge, and again, the way that you react to this is just to backpedal as much as you can and then do a charged heavy attack right on his head. You will get the hang of like how far back you need to be when you are practicing this, so if you aren't back far enough, then you'll just want to dodge it. And then finally, like the last thing to consider in phase 1 is anytime you get a critical hit, you'll always want to do a charged heavy attack and then a light attack while he's kind of like stunned after the critical hit. And that just makes it so that your next stagger is much faster because you've already done a whole bunch of poise damage to him before he even had a chance to do anything. But yeah, that's it for phase 1 at least. Now we're getting into the phase 2 moves. Everything here is completely different. It is basically just a second boss, completely different boss. Nothing is the same at all. But it does always begin the same way, and that is the same thing that I described earlier in the easy method. All you'll want to do is backpedal a little bit, and you can drink a blue flask here, or like a red flask if you're hurt or whatever, and then you'll you'll just continue to backpedal until he jumps onto his sword, and then when he does that, you'll wait just half a second and then start running towards him. He'll do his front flip and then create like a giant death orb in front of him, but as long as you're under him, that death orb isn't going to hurt you, and him landing isn't going to hurt you either, so you have enough time for, if you're super quick at least, 2 fully charged heavy attacks. But personally, I think that that is really risky. He can do some really quick moves after this, and so I would prefer myself to just do 1 charged heavy attack and then just a light attack after that. Just gives you a little bit more time to react to the next thing he does. And this move doesn't only happen at the beginning of the fight, it can also just happen randomly. He'll just jump onto his sword, and then you just kind of have to start running away from him, because you do have to be slightly like away from him a little bit for him to actually do the front flip, and you have to be in front of him. So whenever he jumps on his sword, just start running away and in front of him, and that will trigger him to do that front flip, and then you'll be able to do the charged heavy attack and the single light attack afterwards. I actually really like seeing this move come out because it's really easy to see coming. He jumps on his sword, he doesn't really do that in any other moves that he has. And the dodge is extremely simple if you just remember that you just have to run in front of him and away until he starts front flipping, and then you can just go under him and do a charged heavy attack and a light attack. That's a pretty good punish, and I find myself pretty consistently getting a stagger after this move, so that's kind of why I like seeing it. If you don't run away and in front of him, he'll do a little explosion underneath him. It'll just be an area of effect move around him a little bit, and you can just dodge that, but he becomes active very quickly after that. His recovery time is very short, so there's not really much opportunity to punish it. And so I would try to bait out that front flip whenever possible, because it's a lot more punishable. In Phase 2, the neutral position is right in front of his face, just like it was in Phase 1, but once you do get right in front of his face, you're going to want to start strafing to the right and back towards behind him. But you want to start that maneuver from right in front of his face. So always just try to get in front of him and then start moving kind of to the right and behind him. There's a couple reasons you'll want to do this. There is a smaller amount of moves that he can do when you're to the right and behind him, so the fight becomes more predictable, and also there's a couple of moves that are extremely dangerous and only affect right in front of him, and it's a lot easier to dodge those moves when you're already sort of strafing in the right direction. Like this sword swing death sphere attack that he does, it will only happen when you're to the right and behind him, so the move will never happen when you're not in that position. But if you're already sort of strafing in that direction anyway when it starts, you can just continue to strafe in that direction. When the sword swing happens, you'll just dodge it, continuing to go in that direction. And then you can either sprint completely same direction, just start sprinting and go as far as you can until the death sphere appears. Or you can wait a second and then dodge again, which is what I like to do, and that will get you away from the sphere as well. If you're not already dodging in that direction, you'll have to dodge sort of backwards and then wait a second and then dodge backwards again when the death sphere appears. But if you dodge forwards, when you dodge the sword swing, if you do that by dodging forwards, you're gonna die. That's just the wrong thing to do. You can't get out of the situation if you do that. So really just commit to a direction that isn't forwards and then dodge really quickly when the sword swing happens, wait a second while continuing to go in that direction, and then dodge again, and that's how you get out of this move. And the other move that would be easier to dodge if you're already headed towards the back right corner of him is this roar attack. It does just happen completely randomly, but if you're strafing towards the back right of him anyway, you can just continue to strafe it, and then when the roar actually appears, you'll be heading in the right direction where you could just dodge right when it appears, and you'll be able to avoid it by doing that. It's a lot harder to dodge by strafing backwards and trying to dodge backwards right in front of him. You have to already sort of be kind of far away from him when he starts the roar in order for strafing and dodging backwards to actually work. It'll still hit you if you're doing that. But honestly, that doesn't really matter because the roar doesn't do any damage whatsoever. So even if it does hit you, whatever, just make sure you dodge the next move that comes out. And also you can block the roar, and it will still hit you, but it won't do any damage still, no matter what weapon you're blocking with, just because the move itself inherently doesn't do any damage. And the stun that you receive when you block is much shorter than the stun that you receive when you don't block, so you'll be in a better position to be able to dodge the next stuff that comes up more easily. Like this double sword swing, for example, where he crouches back a little bit and then he does like a spin in a circle and it swings the sword twice. For this one, you just want to dodge forwards into the swing both times, and usually you can just dodge and then just immediately dodge again. So once you get the hang of this one, it's not that hard to dodge because of the crouch. It's sort of easy to see coming, so dodge twice at the right time, and then usually you can just get a light attack in there. And then something else that you'll see when you're behind him is the turnaround slam, where he jumps sort of like 180 degrees and then slams his sword. With this one, you just kind of walk forwards and to the right very slightly and then just start charging up a charged heavy attack. The recovery time on it is very fast. He'll start doing other stuff pretty quickly after this, but you can usually get at least an uncharged heavy attack on him. And then when you're ever in that position, like right in front of him, close enough where you did that turnaround slam right into his face, he will sometimes do this double sword slam where he just kind of like slams his sword into the ground once and then a second later does it again. You can get a light attack on him if you just unlock your camera and then like face manually towards his arm when it lands the first time. You can get a light attack and then dodge and then get another light attack to punish this move fully, but otherwise it's not that punishable. Unlike this other move, the sword swing standing slam, which is extremely punishable. I love seeing this thing. If you're just like right underneath him, this is not going to hit you, and it takes a long time, so you can just like charge up like 2 heavy attacks if you're right there. If you see this thing come out, it's very likely that you're about to get a stagger, especially if you're doing charged heavy attacks with a hammer type weapon like the Morningstar and using Cragblade. You'll just get staggers like all day against this move. Occasionally you might have to dodge forward just to avoid that first slam, or the like sword swing that he does before he does the slam. But even so, you can still get a light attack and then charge a heavy attack in there, so this is a very punishable move. It's very good when you see it come out. And instead of a sword swing, he can also just do like a sword drag in front of him in the same direction, and that move, if you dodge it forward, he'll do the exact same thing, where he does the standing slam afterwards, so it's basically the same move as the other move if you consider that, if you dodge forward every time. So again, very, very punishable, but if you dodge backwards after he does the sword drag, he will instead do this front flip, which is very difficult to dodge. But if you do dodge it, you just have to like wait a second while he does the first flip in the double front flip thing. So if you're just like standing there and waiting to dodge, that first flip isn't going to hit you and the second flip is going to hit you. So the second flip is really what you're trying to dodge, and you'll just dodge that to the right. And then if you successfully did dodge it, you'll be able to charge up a heavy attack and punish it like that. But I would not recommend ever dodging backwards for that sword drag, because this dodging to the right thing is harder to do than simply dodging forward and then charging up a bunch of heavy attacks. Another kind of fast thing that he does is the death beam retreat, where he shoots a single death beam at you by jumping backwards and doing like a backflip. If he does end up backflipping behind a pillar, for example, or if he backflips and then you're able to run behind a pillar, that is the safest time that I find to be able to reapply Cragblade, so just something to consider. But other than that, it's not really a punishable move. You just have to go and try to get back into the neutral position after he does this. If you're on the side of the arena that has the intact pillars, he can also jump up onto the pillar and then do the death beam retreat just from that position instead. And for all of the death beams, basically, you'll just want to dodge them as soon as you see the death beam appear in the air. That works pretty much at any distance. It'll always just like take a split second to come and like land right on you. So dodge immediately as soon as the death beam appears. That will be successful, and then you just have to reapproach him after this. Another thing that he can do when you're near the intact pillars is the sword plunge. He'll just jump up onto the intact pillar, and then instead of doing the death beam retreat, his sword will glow gold and he'll do a plunge into the ground, and then the ground will rupture underneath him like a second later. This is the first of his 3 parryable moves with the Blasphemous Claw, and I would very much suggest learning how to parry these moves, because it creates such a huge opening to be able to do like a ton of jumping heavy attacks. Basically every time you get a parry on him, you'll be able to stagger him. Just do jumping heavy attacks until he staggers. It's very reliable, so I would recommend learning how to use the Blasphemous Claw on all 3 of these moves that I'm about to go over. First one being this pillar sword plunge that you're seeing right now. If you don't use the Blasphemous Claw, you're gonna have to dodge it right when he lands, and then dodge immediately after you like just spam the dodge button and dodge twice, and that will dodge the ground rupture that happens after he lands. And then you can just get like a heavy attack in there. But if you use the Blasphemous Claw instead, it will create a gigantic opening from which you can just do those like jumping heavy attacks that I was talking about. Definitely recommend doing that instead. And the second of the 3 moves that you can learn how to parry to create a giant opening is this double death beam jump move, where he will just jump in the air and do a death beam as though he was going to do the retreat, but instead he'll just do another death beam just like a second later, and then he will do a sword plunge kind of similarly to how he just did off of the intact pillar. And the timing for the dodge like of the rupture of the ground after the plunge is the same exact timing as the pillar sword plunge as well, so it's always going to be when he lands you dodge and then immediately dodge again for the like rupture of the ground. But really what you should be doing is Blasphemous Clawing him to create like a gigantic opening. Again, just do a whole bunch of jumping heavy attacks that will stagger him, and that's a great thing. And as we should remember from like the easy method of the video, the third of the 3 parryable moves with the Blasphemous Claw is this triple death beam jump, where he will go up in the air, shoot 3 death beams, and then do like a sword sweep right at the end. It is a little bit intimidating to see this thing come out, but it's not that hard because the secret to overcoming it is just that you have to parry right after the 3rd death beam, basically immediately. Or you could dodge it, because the dodge timing and the parry timing are exactly the same, and if you just aren't using the Blasphemous Claw, then immediately after dodging the 3rd death beam, you'll dodge again to dodge the sword sweep as well. But because they are the same timing and it's so easy to get the Blasphemous Claw, you might as well get it, and you might as well create that gigantic opening for yourself to do a whole bunch of unlocked jumping heavy attacks. I do recommend unlocking because it's easier to hit that way. And that's kind of it for his moveset. A couple other things maybe that would help you to keep in mind though is that the Blasphemous Claw parry is actually much quicker. It comes out faster than an actual like shield parry, and that just makes it easier to use the Blasphemous Claw than it is to use like an actual parry shield in regular combat. And when you do get a stagger, which is like extremely common after you get a successful parry, you're gonna want to take that critical hit, and then immediately after the critical hit do a charged heavy attack and a light attack, and that is going to bring down Maliketh's poise to the point where it only is going to take another charged heavy attack, especially if you're using Cragblade, to stagger him again. And he often does stuff that is really easy to punish with a charged heavy, so because of this, all this information means you're able to create this like stagger chain where every single move he does is basically just another stagger and critical hit that you can do. And if you're using the Cold Infused Morningstar, you're getting both a Frost activation and a Bleed activation, which do a ton of damage on top of all of the critical hits that you're already getting. So you can see how this setup can pretty easily overpower the 80 poise that Maliketh has, and it pretty much you just create this stagger chain that lasts all the way through the entire phase, and this phase can be extremely quick and simple if you get lucky, like if he doesn't use too many retreat attacks, for example. And that's kind of it for the tips that I could give you for a rune level 1 weapon level 0 character. I've kind of reached like the bounds of my knowledge on Maliketh, so if you know something more than I do, go ahead and leave it in the comments. I would be interested to hear it. And the rest of the video is just meant to be sort of a showcase of the strategy, all of the things that I went over for how to react to all his moves. It's easier for me to understand all that when I see it happening in real time, so the rest of the video is just a example of me defeating Maliketh hitless at medium roll with only like a hammer type weapon. I just hope it's kind of helpful to show off the flow of the battle a little bit better. And if you liked this video and you want to see more content like this in the future, guides and rune level 1 weapon level 0 stuff, feel free to subscribe. Thanks.
To kill what?